right, I got the solo. It wasn't easy, and actually if you haven't seen the other videos yet, go check those out first. I just needed a good crosswind day to practice crosswind takeoffs and landings, and we found the day. So this was a few weeks ago, and we set up on the crosswind runway and started some takeoff and landing practice. So in addition to the downward facing crotch cam to see stick deflection and airspeed indicator, that kind of stuff, I also added a horizontal line, which is kind of like an artificial horizon. It's roughly lined up with where the horizon is. This is going to show us the 3-point attitude for landing, but it's also going to show roll a little bit better. So for this first takeoff, wasn't very good. You can see we go left, sticks all over the place, airplanes all over the place. Luckily airplane goes in the air and things get better. Then as we come around for the first landing of the day, some things to keep in mind speed wise. It seems like this plane likes to approach at 60, so we're a little fast here. We got a ton of runway, but I don't like to get in the habit of burning off a third of the runway just floating. So you can see crosswind corrections going in, and see how we're banked left, so we kind of make a left touchdown, left wheel, and get the nose up and touchdown in that 3-point attitude. So it wasn't very smooth. You can see Ryan pulling the stick back there. By not pulling the stick all the way back, I gave the plane room to bounce around. Do a full back taxi, and here's another takeoff. Let's see if I learned anything from the first one. I did leave the carb heat out, so that's not great. See a little bounce there. Ryan pushing the nose forward. Basically I just pulled back too soon, and basically the airplane ended up bouncing between the tail wheel and the main wheels. So don't do that. Next approach, also coming in a bit fast, also quite steep. One of the skills that I've developed, actually just over time, is extending your pattern or contracting your pattern to match your current energy situation. So if you're a little fast on downwind or you're too high on downwind, you'd want to extend that. Likewise, if you're slow or short, you may want to make a shorter turn. This landing, not super great, not very good directional control, but it's on the ground. The crosswind, I should say, is coming from the left. I don't think I mentioned that yet, so we're landing with a left crosswind. Here's the next takeoff. Nose coming up. Right rudder applied, good directional control, and we're off in the air. Now for some reason I, instead of just turning left, setting a crab angle for maintaining center line, I was just leaning into the wind, which isn't usually what I do. Eventually Ryan scolded me for that, so I ended up doing a crab, but for quite a while I was just doing this side slip and I didn't notice that I was doing that. Next landing coming in. Dialing in that crosswind correction. Speaking of slips, you can see we got a little bit left wing to stay aligned. Transitioning here towards the flare. Speed again a bit fast. In my defense, the touchdown point is right here. Nose up. And there we go. Now that was a good boring landing. I followed that one with a few more relatively boring takeoffs and landings, and just repeat. I'm not sure, I think we got about 9 takeoffs and landings in at this point. Some were good, some were not great, but overall I was able to demonstrate directional control, you know, both on takeoff and landings with crosswind. So after nailing just a few more good touchdowns there, and there, all in the touchdown zone, might I add, but still a little far out, and another one there. Ryan had enough. He was like, you know what? I think you're ready to solo. And just like when I first soloed for my private license, it's something you think that you might do that day, but when it actually happens, you've been so focused on flying that it comes as a little bit of a surprise. So, taxied back, kicked Ryan out. He gave me a little bit of advice.
Sully your reputation.
Yeah, fly good, don't suck.
Fly good, don't suck. Try to do that.
Taxi to the not crosswind runway, which is longer, wider. Line up the airplane. You always want to make sure with a tail wheel to just pull forward a little bit so your tail wheel isn't pointing left or right. Took a little breather, a little pause there, and there we go. First solo takeoff. That was my best takeoff to date, and here's why. Look at this. So power is applied, the airplane's lighter, keep that in mind. As I pushed the stick forward, the tail came up very smoothly, and not much longer after that, the plane was ready to fly, and you can see it just took right off. So that takeoff roll was maybe 200 or 300 feet tops. While I was doing that, Ryan went and picked up his airplane, because cool CFIs have their own plane that they can keep eyes on you. So if you look closely where that taxiway rolls around, you'll see Ryan's airplane, a Rand's S20. He's warming up, getting ready to go. So coming in for my first solo landing. You can see speed's a bit fast. Leading off that speed and dialing in corrections and flare. No, I wasn't able to reproduce the same smooth tail up. What I figured out much later, weeks later, is when I land I have a lot of back trim. So if I don't dial that out, the nose comes up a little faster than I care to admit. But anyway, so Ryan took off. At this point we're like, hey, instead of just staying in the pattern, let's go do some fun flying instead. We're thinking of flying north, do a victory lap around my hometown, and maybe buzz my friend's Robert's farm. Now Robert actually has a farm strip, so I texted him to see what he was up to and told him we were going to buzz by, and he invited us to land at his farm strip. Now keep in mind, I am now a solo tailwheel pilot with one solo landing and takeoff. So we decided to go check it out, and Ryan, he's flying ahead of me, you can't see it. Ryan figured he'd do the first landing there, see what the winds were like, see what the terrain was like, and based on that, he recommended that I should give it a try if I was comfortable. So here we are on the downwind. Since we lost the crotch cam because the battery ran out, I overlaid the GoPro speed, which isn't exactly matched up to the airplane's airspeed, because A, this is ground speed, and B, I think the airplane's speedometer is wildly inaccurate. We'll have to prove that in a different video, but this is the base turn, so slowing down. So for an unfamiliar airfield like this, just fly the pattern, you know, the way you have every other landing. It sets you up in the right point in space at the right speed. So there it is. You see that little strip in between, that light green in between the dark green? So that's tall corn on both sides. So here's a grass runway. It's in a north-south orientation, and it slopes up. So it's one of those runways where you want to land in one direction and take off in the opposite direction. So coming in here, a little fast as usual, if this speedometer is to be believed. It was was wonderful. I had not landed on grass yet on this plane. My last grass landing was probably 200 flying hours ago in an air coupe. So we had plenty of space, even have a little uphill at the end, so I had to add power. And Ryan was already waiting. Of course, we had to celebrate with a few pictures and showed the plane to my friend Robert and his family. A beautiful way to solo. Now here's some outside footage of our planes taxiing for takeoff. As you can see, the sun's starting to set. There goes Evelyn, and there goes Ryan. You can see me dip just below the hill there, and up she goes. Now Ryan barely needs any runway to get airborne. There he goes.
Oh, wow.
Now here it is from the inside. This was a very strange takeoff. As much as I was trying to reproduce that smooth tail up on that first solo takeoff, the runway is sloping down, so it just produces a whole different sight picture when the ground is curving away from you. I got airborne pretty quick. Just decided to keep speed before pulling up here. So we departed Roberts Airfield, heading south, racing back to Iowa City before the sun sets, and nothing happens quickly in a Luscombe, I'll tell you that. Got a picture of Ryan's plane in flight, right off the wingtip there. And I cross behind him, and we set up for downwind for runway 7 at Iowa City. So Ryan turned base where you normally would turn base, and I extended my downwind out and flew a little bit longer downwind leg, so we had the appropriate spacing. So here's my last landing of the night. Overall, this was just a fantastic day. Got to do some crosswind takeoff and landings and build confidence in the airplane and direction keeping, and then to kind of go back to what it's all about, do some fun flying, visit friends. If you haven't already, please subscribe. In the next video, I actually get a GoPro on the wing looking at the plane, and we fly to Oskaloosa for an oil change. We'll see you next time.